The story happened when I was 17 years old. I, like most girls, became very bad-tempered when I entered puberty, especially with my family. My mother and I would often argue over small things. My mother would often criticize my hair and dressing style. She thought I was dressing too rebelliously and not in line with her expectations and values. I, however, see it as an expression of my freedom and individuality and do not want to be restricted or bound. We often had conflicts and arguments over these issues. I would complain that she did not understand me and did not respect my choices and independence. She, in turn, would think that I did not respect her opinions and teachings and was not willing to accept her advice and help. This conflict caused our relationship to become more and more strained. I began to be less and less willing to communicate with her, and she began to feel frustrated and helpless, not knowing how to communicate with me. I felt confused and fed up with my family and scared about the future. The story takes place that summer. It was so hot that summer that it hadn't rained for almost 2 months. On the last day of August, a light rain began to fall in the sky and I couldn't resist walking outside. The rain dripped on the leaves, making a crisp, pleasant sound. As I was playing in the rain, a bolt of lightning suddenly appeared and struck me and a nearby tree. In a flash, I felt a strong burst of electricity penetrate my body. I found myself lying on the ground, surrounded by smoke and the smell of burning. My body trembled violently, and the pain was so intense that I could not breathe. I tried to stand up, but my body had no strength left and I could only curl up on the ground. Suddenly, my soul left my body and floated in the air. I saw my body, covered with burns and bruises. I began to get scared, not knowing what had happened to me or what to do. At that moment, I heard my mother's screams. She came running out of the room. I wanted to say something to her, but I couldn't move my lips and could only watch her cry sadly. I felt very strange because I could no longer move my body, but my consciousness was still there. I began to feel fearful, not knowing what would happen to me next. Suddenly, a light appeared in the upper right of me. A figure appeared out of the light and he flapped his huge wings. He smiled at me and held out his hand, inviting me to leave the place with him. I felt that this man was very friendly and that he conveyed a strange feeling to me. His smile made me feel safe and comfortable, as if I had always known him. After we passed through the clouds, we came to a beautiful place. In this place, I felt a peace that I had never felt before, and I felt that my mind was healed. At the same time, I also had a wonderful feeling as if everything was interconnected and interdependent. When I turned around, I found that the angel had disappeared. Everything here was so beautiful. I saw a bright starry sky and mountains and lakes in the distance. I felt my soul was liberated, away from the bondage brought by my body. Suddenly, a huge screen appeared in front of my eyes. I saw my past and my selfish behavior without regard for the feelings of others. I did something that made my mother very angry in spite of her feelings. It was an evening when my mother had worked very hard to prepare a nice dinner for me. I didn't tell her in advance that I was going out with my friends. When I got home in the evening, I went to bed without saying hello to my mother. She was worried about me all night. She was very angry and scolded me. At that time, I didn't realize the harm my behavior had caused to my mother. I now realize my mistake at that time and feel very remorseful. In fact, there are many other things like this. Although no one here has criticized me, it has made me very ashamed. I also saw some good things that I had done. It was a winter morning. When I walked out of my house, I found an old man slipped and fell in the street, spilling the things in his shopping bag. I ran over and picked up the old man and helped him pick up the scattered things. I walked home with him and helped him put his things away. The old man was very grateful and expressed his thanks to me. This incident made me feel warm and satisfied because I was able to help others and make them feel happy. I realized that it doesn't take special opportunities or conditions to do good, it just takes a little more time to pay attention to the people and things around me. A bright light appeared before my eyes. Jesus stepped out of the light. I saw that he was wearing a robe of immense whiteness, as if it were woven from soft clouds. The hem of the robe trailed on the ground. Around his waist was a golden belt, which radiated a bright light. Jesus' face had a smile on it, and his eyes were filled with wisdom and warmth. I felt that I had received a special grace. As I drew near to him, I felt an indescribable power. He did not speak, but I could feel his love and care. In his presence, my heart became so peaceful that all my worries and concerns disappeared. I felt surrounded by love, just like a mother holding her baby. I gained a lot of knowledge there and without any words or visuals. It was a higher level of understanding and communication. All my questions were answered, and the answers made so much sense. I even understood the nature of time, which is just a limitation of our world. There, time does not exist. He also told me that everything is about love, and that love is the essence of who we are. The purpose of our coming into this world is to learn to love and receive love. He made me understand that everything in the universe is interconnected and that each person's actions affect others. He encouraged me to continue spreading love and light, which is my mission and goal. Jesus said to me, "It's time to go back." I prayed to Jesus to let me stay, and he didn't answer me right away. He showed me the following scene. I was lying in a hospital bed. There were many paramedics busy around me as they tried to revive me. I heard one of the paramedics tell my mother that if I still could not regain my heartbeat in 5 minutes, I would be declared officially dead. When my mother heard the doctor's words, she began to cry loudly. Her sobs made me feel very heartbroken. My father was beside me, also wiping his tears secretly. I wanted to call out to them and tell them that I was still here, but I couldn't feel my body. I felt so guilty watching my mother in pain that I wished I could comfort her and tell her that everything would be okay. But I couldn't get close to her or communicate with her. I felt like I was just a silent observer. But at this time I had to make a choice to stay or go back. I saw my mom crying so much that I could feel her sadness. Finally, I told Jesus my choice. He smiled and nodded his head, seemingly satisfied with my answer. Then he said to me, "Follow me, we don't have much time." I felt a panic in my heart as I knew I was about to leave this wonderful world. We went through a shining door and arrived at the hospital. We returned to the ward and I saw my body lying on the bed. My mother and father were in the hallway, and my mother was full of sorrow. Jesus' hand gently tapped me on the shoulder and gestured for me to come into the room. Jesus told me that I needed to get back into my body. He said that my family and friends needed me. Even though I wanted to remain with Jesus, I understood that I had to go back and get on with my life. I expressed my gratitude to Jesus. He smiled and nodded to me, then told me that he would always be there for me, protecting and leading me. Finally, I went back into my body. I saw my hands and feet, and felt my breath and heartbeat. I was finally back in the world. When I was discharged from the hospital, I was doing better, but deep down I still felt heavy. I would often run to church, trying to find answers. I met a nun and I decided to confide in her about my experience. She listened very carefully. She encouraged me to stand firm in my faith and believe that my experience was real. She told me how fortunate I was to be able to experience such things. These words brought me great comfort and support. I was 17 years old at the time and had absolutely no understanding of the term near-death experience. I am now 49 years old. And I still remember all the details of the experience when I look back on it. At that time, the term near-death experience was not yet popular in society and few people talked about such experiences. I tried to tell my family about it, but they were skeptical of such paranormal phenomena and more than anything thought I was lying. Therefore, I buried it deep in my heart. Although this experience gave me great insight, I also felt the pain of loneliness and misunderstanding as a result. As time went on, more and more people began to pay attention to and study near-death experiences. I read many articles on the subject, listened to other people's stories, and gradually understood that my experience was not an isolated case. I began to accept and understand the experience more and gradually began to incorporate it into my life. Although I still feel confused, I know that I am not alone. Now I go to the nursing home every week when I can. I chat with the elderly people there. Once, an old man suddenly asked me, "Do you think people really go to heaven after they die?" I understood his inner confusion and uneasiness, because their bodies had brought them closer to death. The thinking about death was also more profound and real. So I shared what I had experienced. I told him that I had been through a near-death experience and saw the beauty of heaven. As I told him, he began to gradually relax, and there was a little more light in his eyes. I saw a small smile on his face, as if he had found the answer. I described to him the picture I saw in the simplest and most understandable language possible. He listened very carefully and thanked me afterwards. I realized that these old people's worries about death and the future could find some comfort and inspiration through my experience. This also made me feel very satisfied and rewarded. From then on, whenever I visited the nursing home, I would talk to them and share my experience. I was convinced that my story could bring some hope and help to them. One day, a friend gave me a Bible. It took me by surprise, because I had never read it carefully and I thought it looked hard to understand. But that night I opened it, turned a page at random, and found that it talked about the wisdom of God. As I began to read, the words seemed to be absorbed by me. I read for hours and felt spiritually fulfilled. Since then, I have read the Bible every day and shared my experiences with other believers. I felt closer to God. I stopped wasting time and focused more on my faith and a healthy lifestyle. I realized that God is always around us. I now feel like I am growing and I am getting closer to Him every day, which makes me feel blessed. My faith has given me inner peace and tranquility and has made me appreciate every moment of my life more.